Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second series of readings from the radio and other stories. Today we're going to revisit Nanga Hills Government Bilingual High School in Kambe to talk about literature books, 39 Steps and Things Fall Apart. Back then, students had a way of dealing with old books. They sold them immediately they were out of program. Some even found a way of selling books that were currently being treated in class. One of such books was 39 Steps by John Birken. It was about Scotland Yard and a character called Blackstone, but the plot was just too difficult for most Form 2 students to grasp. One tortuous quote from that book stuck in your mind. The man who knew that he knew what he knew had found him. End of quote. Even when the text was still being treated in class, certain classmates decided to sell their copies at the old market at knockdown prices. The book dealers of Nkambe Old Market knew how to kill a man's spirit through their Shylock dexterity in bargaining. They mastered the conditions that led students to sell books and gave them just enough to stave off the munches for a day. Suffice to say that the title 39 Steps was so popular that it became the name of a popular local corn beer shop house in the old market. And this shop house was mostly frequented by students. Amid the temptation of selling books out of the program, one book literally refused to be sold. And that book was Things Fall Apart, as far as you were concerned. You came to Cheapside when Things Fall Apart was no longer on the syllabus. But it was one of those books that engrossed and led you into reading it over and over. Though you ended up not knowing whether it was Okonkwo who wrote Chinua Achebe, or whether it was Things Fall Apart who wrote Okonkwo. For most of you at your young age, perhaps because of your teenage identity, it was the fate of the young Ikemefuna that enthralled you in deep and enduring empathy. Ikemefuna came to represent the shadowed force of unnameable and tragic destiny, whose imaginative force was only paralleled by Shakespeare's Hamlet. But unlike Hamlet, who had the chance to encapsulate his outrageous fortune in his potent existentialist musing, to be or not to be, Achebe's Ikemefuna was not afforded that privilege. His thoughts, never to be known, remained wrapped in an ill-omened silence. As a move to stave off war with Omofia after killing Udo's wife, the neighboring tribesmen offered Udo a young virgin, and to the people of Omofia, they offered a young lad, Ikemefuna, in compensation. The elders chose Okonkwo to host the young boy who became part and parcel of his family. Achebe says, and I quote, "He grew up rapidly like a yam tendril in the rainy season, and was full of the sap of life. He had become wholly absorbed into his new family. He was like an elder brother to Nwoye, and from the very first day seemed to have kindled a new fire in the young boy. End of quote. But tradition had to be respected, and Okonkwo was not one to be thought of as weak. And the story continued as Ikemefuna took his tragic exit. I quote, "As the man who had cleared his throat drew up and raised his machete, Okonkwo looked away. He heard the blow. The pot fell and broke in the sand. He heard Ikemefuna cry, 'My father, they have killed me.' As he ran towards him, dazed with fear, Okonkwo drew his machete and cut him down. He was afraid of being thought weak.